Joining us now, fresh off, speaking of RFK Jr. in the House, it's Representative Mark Pocan, a Democrat representing Wisconsin's 2nd District, serves on the House Appropriations Committee and co-founder and co-chair of the Labor Caucus and the podcast that he has, With Liberty and Justice for Some. Representative Pocan, nice to see you.
Hey, great seeing you, Dean.
I was cheering for you. Your clip is going viral on social media. You asked RFK Jr. because this is called Oversight. So the chairs of the various agencies have to come before respective Congress committees that line up with it. So tell us what you asked him. And then the line he said, which is just great. I actually agree with RFK Jr. for the first time ever.
Yeah, well, I thought it was simple. I wanted, because he said he's vaccinated his children. I thought, something reassuring during what's going on is if he said, I said, have you, if you had children now, would you vaccinate them against measles? And I thought that was like saying, is water good to drink?
Right.
And instead, I got a probably, and then finally he goes, I guess I'm not the one who should be giving medical advice. And yeah, he runs the CDC that gives medical advice about vaccines. So it was bizarre. And then because I still was a little puzzled, that I asked him about chickenpox and polio. Again, I thought maybe one of those would be a nice softball, and then realized that, he's got a lacrosse racket or whatever you use a lacrosse while, he's got a baseball coming at him. It was just a very strange conversation, and truly wasn't meant to be a gotcha. It was meant to be a freebie.
You even said, I'm not trying to do a gotcha. And RFK Jr.'s exact line is, I don't think people should be taking medical advice from me. Exactly. Yeah. You're a lawyer. You shouldn't be heading Health and Human Services. This is insane. No medical background, just make them ups. And now he's head of HHS. And look, other colleagues press him as well. And in the Senate, they really press him a great deal, which I think is so important on a range of things, such as cuts to the National Institute of Health, to different programs that help people, to cancer studies. It's overall, I mean, obviously, I just saw some clips. Overall, is he responsive in the hearing, or is he like Kristi Noem? She was a different committee today, completely combative. It was like a Fox News. She's on Fox News debating a liberal type of thing. Or was he actually trying to be responsive?
So it was weird. I've never really engaged with him before. So, he's a conundrum to me because there's a few things he says I agree with.
Sure.
I think, we should be promoting healthier food, and we should go after these additives that these companies cheaply add to junk food that can cause, cancer and other things, right? That's good. And I said that to him, but then he also said things that, I kind of wondered if, there's a full orbit on this planet, that he's in. And so it was really weird. And a couple things he said actually were very perceptive on some things, right? But then there were, suddenly I stumped him by saying, would you recommend a measles vaccine? So it was an interesting morning, Dean. I think that's the best way to sum it up.
It looked interesting. And look, it's at least they're having to come before the committee. I had a listener call in last night and ask, can Democrats call for any investigations, do more than call? Obviously, you can call for it, but because you're in the minority, do you have any ability to start investigations? Do you have any ability to subpoena witnesses? So what's the process? I wanted to ask you that because that was a listener's question yesterday.
Yeah, so we can't subpoena folks per se. We did try to do a shadow hearing that Rosa put together, Rosa DeLauro, on the Labor Education Subcommittee for Appropriations. But I'll be honest, I mean, we streamed it. I don't know how many people saw it, right? I mean, we can do things like that, but it's not the full power of the committee to do. I still think the most powerful thing we can do, Dean, and I'm still talking to my leadership about this, is, we should go into 50 Republican districts the week we're home Memorial Day and do town halls. And, if we did that, that would be I think a kick-ass way of holding these guys accountable. Right now, they're voting on these terrible reconciliation bills that are cutting, healthcare funding and education funding and food assistance, and hold them fully accountable. Because to me, again, I know I'm an average guy from Wisconsin, right? But, if you are really proud of something, you'd want to go on the rooftop and scream it. And instead, if you're hiding in your basement and you won't do a town hall, that speaks volumes more than the he said, she said about what's in a bill. It just says they're not honest. They're not telling you the truth if they won't talk about it. So to me, that's the thing we should be doing.
I agree with you. So, and you did some, and Bonnie Watson Coleman did some, and other members did it, and it gets a lot of local press, which is really important. So let's talk about, they had the markup in the various committees on the dream, beautiful big bill that Trump wants, which is going to gut a lot of programs. What can you share? What do you want to highlight that's of concern to you? Because now there's been some votes out of committee, so we have more of a sense of the framework for gutting Medicaid, SNAP, which are food stamps, and other programs. So what can you share?
Everything we've said for months has happened,
Yeah.
right? That's the bottom line. And now their new pivot, they finally think they have a pivot, is this is about waste, fraud, and abuse, right? Because it's parroting something that sounds good. The problem is, I think it's one of those, if you just scratch the surface, you find don't last very long. So, I just think all the more reason to go, and I am on a few Saturdays in the future. At the end of May, I'm going into Derek Van Orden's district again. There's a city I haven't been to yet. I'm going to hit everywhere, and we're going to do another, public hearing or a town hall, I should say, to let people speak, about this. Because, if you have a family member on Medicaid, and many people do, 1 out of 3 kids in Wisconsin gets their health insurance from
Yeah.
Medicaid. 55% of seniors in nursing homes in Wisconsin are getting their help from Medicaid. 45% of adults with disabilities living independently get their help from Medicaid. They want to be heard, because they're afraid they're going to lose health insurance. And it's not fraud and waste and abuse that we're hearing from groups like the Congressional Budget Office that are telling us this is real. People will lose health care based on these votes. And at the end of the day, you also have to remember what this is for. It's not, they've even said, oh, we're going to redirect this and be able to expand healthcare. Bullshit. This is completely about a tax break for the wealthiest, for Elon Musk and Donald Trump and Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos,
All the same.
billionaire boys. They're all the same, right? Exactly. And that's why they're doing this. And I just think we've got to be real aggressive that Memorial Day week when we're all back home and make people accountable.
I agree. I think that's so important. I'm telling Representative Mark Pocan, Medicaid's a lifeline for an area of 80 million Americans, from prenatal care to 4 to 10 children, that need it, they get their assistance from Medicaid, through seniors. So from the beginning of life to later in life, it's there, and everywhere in between. It's such a fundamentally important program. And again, it shows this was a program championed by a Democratic president. Just like Social Security was championed by FDR, and Medicare was championed by a Democratic president, and CHIP, the Children's Health Insurance Program, was us. The programs we fight for to help our fellow Americans. The other side, exactly what you say, it's for the wealthy. Tax cut for Elon Musk because he doesn't have enough private jets to have. He needs another private jet or another spaceship to Mars or something. It's outrageous to me. This is such a painful thing. Look, we see stories in Politico. There's some Republicans on the fence. Is it BS, or do you get a sense there might actually be enough in the House to lessen the impact of what the other Republicans want to do?
It's the real fight. They only need like 3 people, right, to fail. Granted, we have a couple people, there's 6, or maybe it's 4, but 3 is the actual number by the number of seats we have. And, David Valadao in California, over 60% of his constituents are on Medicaid. Wow. Is he really going to be taking this vote? If he is, he better see what Trump's going to appoint him to, because he won't have a job after next November, right? But I think that if you have 3 members, I don't think they're going to publicly say it. But even if they privately in their caucus say it, which means they don't have the votes, I don't expect them to be added to profiles and courage, right? I just think that they need to say, hey, I'm not going to be a member of Congress anymore. If you do this, we better do something about it. I can't vote that way. I mean, the ones who are standing up right now are over the SALT deduction, the state and local tax deduction. Again, for rich people, I get it, Republicans. You like your donors. I get it. But, I've had people in my office on other issues. And when you talk about Medicaid, I had one woman, I think she was working in the banking industry back home. And she just said, I was on Medicaid when my child had a serious illness that if I didn't have it, we would have gone bankrupt. So I was on Medicaid for that. So it's not certain people who are too lazy to work or whatever. This is real people who are working, but they would have literally been bankrupted because of a disease. And my mom, I grew up in a lower middle class family. She luckily, her side of the family had great genes. And she lived to 93, but in the last, years, she was on Medicaid in the nursing home because she had no money at the end, but what are you going to do? I mean, these are just real people, and we hear these stories all the time.
Well, maybe the royal family in Qatar can give us health care instead of
Yeah.
giving Trump a jet for $400 million. Or maybe Trump can fly his jet around and take care of everyone. So I got to get your reaction. I mean, Donald Trump's right now visiting with his business partners across the Middle East because his sons really do. And through his crypto company that he owns ownership in, he does have deals with the UAE, with Qatar, with Saudi. So he went to visit all of his business partners, and he's going to come back with a $400 million jet that even Ted Cruz and a few other Republicans are publicly saying, don't do this, is not a good idea. He's showing them I can do whatever I want. What is your reaction to this brazen corruption by this guy?
Well, no surprise whatsoever, right? I mean, unfortunately, this is what we know. He has been a master grifter all his life, but even, in the official capacity, he's been a grifter. It's just like, I think the plane is just a symbol of it, and with the gold and everything. Like, if you only, threw in a few extra things that would make it even worse, there's not much more you could do to send the message home that this guy's not doing what's in the citizens of the United States' best interest. He's doing what's in Donald Trump's best interest, just like Elon Musk does what's in Elon Musk's best interest. Because all the new contracts he's gotten and everything, I mean, when you look at his involvement was not to save money and find waste, fraud, and abuse. It was to become waste, fraud, and abuse, right? And now Donald Trump is just finding ways to enrich himself. I just wonder, at what point does MAGA say, I truly hate people who look different than me so much, I will accept anything from my racist leader. As long as my leaders are racist, I'll let them get away with whatever. I'll pay them. They can have their money in gold toilets if they at least still hate people who don't look like me. If you are that afraid to walk out of your house at night, I guess those people are always going to be those people.
Oh, yeah, they're already there. I wish Saudi or Qatar would send him an actual throne that he could sit on in the White House, in the Oval Office. Why not? He wants to be a king so desperately. He loved walking. The way they treat him there is so much better than America. There's no media asking tough questions. There's nothing. It's whatever. And he's the pageantry and everyone dresses up for you. He loved it. This is the guy, I wrote about it for Substack. This is the guy who called for a ban on Muslims, who is now loving the support of those very people he was going to ban because they're giving him money. And the point is, he's also, in his bigotry, he's transactional. I've never seen a guy like this.
He could get a military parade every single day, not just on his birthday, right? With these guys. But, the problem is, and unfortunately, I do read social media comments sometimes, some of these folks are so afraid of anyone who's different than themselves that they just don't care about how corrupt Donald Trump is. They don't care about how incompetent Donald Trump is. All they care about is that, they don't have to be afraid of someone different than them. And it's sad. I can't imagine how they, exist day to day, and they just hang around the same people that, think like them. But for the rest of us, we're paying a pretty big price if people start losing health insurance and education funding and food assistance. And then we've got, federal services not provide, we're paying tax dollars and we're not getting the services so that this tax cut can happen. It's a pretty high price to pay for the rest of us.
Well, Trump is trying to make his base happy by importing white people now, because we're a little low on white people. So we're going to import them because we were running out, apparently. So we went to the factory and they sent some over now. And he's banned, and and this is not the funny part, ending temporary protected status for people from Afghanistan who are going to go back and maybe be killed by the Taliban because they work with our military. And they don't care, because they're brown, they're gone, brown and Muslim. But because the white people of South Africa, and Trump says a genocide, which is just the white genocide bullshit that the white supremacists talk about. He literally repeated that garbage. It's outrageous to see it, but it's all part and parcel of what you're saying. It is about white supremacy, literal white supremacy.
Yeah, no, the comments, when you look back at their posting or even their description of themselves, it's just people who are very, very afraid. And they all think they're tough folks. Usually it's tough guys, obviously white guys who are saying most of this stuff. But, right now, I've been in government for 30 years, local, state, and federal. I've never seen the type of corruption and grifting from an administration, or bringing in, when they brought in Elon Musk in the contracts. That's why I put that Elon Musk Act together, for really solid reasons. You can't be in charge of all the funds of any agency and also get federal contracts. That's a clear direct conflict, and yet now he's getting more and more. And now with this data and all the rest they're trying to get, I guarantee he's going to be getting AI contracts and other stuff at the federal government. He's going to continue to profit off of this. And a lot of us are nervous. I mean, I'm as scared and nervous and pissed as my constituents are at what's
Sure.
happening. And, I'm just trying to help, organize some of that angst so that we can try to fight back. But it's been tough.
It is, and it's not just our subjective opinion. I had a historian on yesterday, Julian Zelizer, is a professor at Princeton, and said we've never seen this level of corruption. There's been administration that had corruption, but it was never to put millions of dollars or billions in their own pocket. It was to stay in power, like Watergate or on Contra, that kind of stuff. This
Yeah.
is unlike anything we've seen. This is dictatorship, third world country stuff, and it's outrageous to see that. Last two things. I'm trying to represent Mark Pocan. The Netanyahu administration is continuing with their embargo since March of starving the Palestinians, blocking food, medicine, and water, and now saber rattling about we're going to go into Gaza. It's going to be unlike anything you've ever seen before. Is that what you're going to do? Kindness this time? Are you going to be human? Are you going to view Palestinians as human beings? Is that what you're going to do? No, you're going to kill even more. This is outrageous. What's going on? What is your reaction? And I guess there's nothing we can do. I mean, this administration's just going to back him.
I don't see how anyone of conscience can still support anything Netanyahu's doing, right? I truly believe this is not the Israeli people. This is the Netanyahu government and other political leaders who are doing this. But you're at a rate, what they're doing, if they start going and taking territory in Gaza and doing some of the things that I think they're are likely to do, this will be without question, the biggest humanitarian concern on the planet, with what's going on. And of course, we're directly complicit because so much of what they're doing is with US weapons. And we need to speak out more. And some of the folks that have, I don't want to be seen as anti-Semitic. You're not anti-Semitic. You're pro-human rights. You care about human beings. It is time. It's past time to speak out.
Yeah, and if anyone who's concerned about that, they can have someone from Jewish Voices for Peace or the countless other Jewish advocates in New York, in America, who are about humanity. And that is what my definition of Judaism is, from my friends who are Jewish, who are compassionate, who have led the charge in the past generation for civil rights and human rights throughout the world. And it's not Netanyahu. I know he's an outlier to this. And so if they're concerned, they should have someone from that. So I want to touch on the last thing, is something with your community, which is the LGBTQ community, and the Supreme Court now allowing to not just ban transgender people to serve in the military like the first Trump regime, but Pete Hegseth actually telling those who've been serving now for years, because Biden allowed it, you got to leave. Like, these are people who have more courage and patriotism than Donald Trump will ever have in his life. And now they're going to be forced out of the military, and all they want to do is serve our nation.
Yeah, President Bone Spurs is going to now tell people who are, proudly serving the nation that they have to leave because he's got to keep part of the base happy, right? And I know there's going to be additional suits, and I don't think this is completely over yet. But what they've done in this area and so many other areas with federal employees by firing them. Some people have been fired, rehired, fired, and then rehired again. At what point do you say, I don't need to do this anymore? But then if, just like with all the plane problems we're having with Newark and others across the country, you fired a bunch of people who work for the FAA and for the, for flight, and now you're having problems, and the best you got is to blame Joe Biden. Why didn't they mention Hunter? Right? They might as well threw him in.
Right.
This is what happens when you don't really care about the consequences of your actions. And, I think one day they were sitting throwing spaghetti against the wall, and they found that, people don't know someone who's trans, or at least think they don't know someone who's trans. So it was a good fear issue. That's how that always motivates their base more than anything. Just like all the racist stuff that they're putting out there. And unfortunately, it's hurting real people. And, things will get better. I truly do believe that, but we're going to have to suffer through more of this on the way.
I mean, do you have concerns of the next step they might take directed at your community, whatever it might be, if it's coming for marriage equality or trying to end civil rights protection? I mean, the list goes on and on of what they could do.
I gotta admit, that's why when Secretary Basant was in front of the committee last week, and I had an interesting conversation with him about, who pays tariffs, and he couldn't
I
answer
saw
the
that.
question.
I
Yeah,
saw that.
what got me there is he is part of the LGBT community.
Right.
The home he just sold, the mansion he just sold in South Carolina, $22 million, I think it was, is painted pink, as is the stone fencing around it. He's clearly an out gay man with children. And I had hoped, if he hadn't spent so much not answering the question on tariffs, I wanted to ask him, would he leave the administration if they did that? Because I do think there are some. I've watched congressional actions in appropriations. They would like to continue go down that slippery slope. But at what point, if someone just like that, who isn't a dumb individual, works for the Trump administration and lets it happen? I mean, that's that famous poem from World War II, first they came for, and
Right. Exactly.
that's the problem. So, we all have to look out for each other during this Trump administration, unless you are pretty much a straight white male. And even then, they'll still find disqualifiers for you. This is not a cabinet for you. This is not an administration for you. This is not a presidency for you.
No, it's a challenging time, and we must remain united, and we can't jettison anybody from our constituency as Democrats because, politically it's easier to do that. We can't do that. That's not who we are. We have to stand up for people. We have to be compassionate and fight the fight. And at the same time, we can fight for economic populism and other stuff, and going after the oligarchy and creating jobs for people. Well, Representative Pocan, thank you so much for making time. And I forgot to mention the Scott Besson thing. That was very good about who pays for tariffs, and that was too funny. Good job.
But you know what? That was another one where I did expect it to be a tough question, Dean. I'm asking the easy stuff in the beginning, because you lead up to stuff a little more complex. And if that's already stumping them, I get that the president only wanted their videos from Fox News when he picked cabinet secretaries, but damn, we don't need a sequel to Idiocracy,
No. And that says a lot. You are asking just straightforward 2 + 2 = 4 questions.
Yeah.
And they're like, it could be 3, it could be 7. I don't know. Who am I to say?
Orange.
Don't listen to anything I say. I didn't know there'd be math here. All right, Representative Pocan, nice seeing you, my friend. Have a great night.
Yep. Take care.